Normally, I play 2 to 5 games within any month. This is why the best games I played typically has about 3. But June 2024 was a bit different, because the only game I played was Elden Ring. I really wanted to set aside the time to go through the game at my own pace, to not have to worry about rushing or worry about jumping to the next game like I have for the past few years. And I'm very glad I did, because that journey took around 200 hours of getting lost in the lanes between and exploring the realm of shadows. Now, I wouldn't say this video is going to be truly spoiler-free. I will be showing footage from my gameplay and talking about various things that I experienced. However, there's going to be one specific section at the end that goes over very plot-relevant things that will be marked off separate as a only click this if you don't care about spoilers, or specifically if you don't care about the ending of the DLC. And so that said, if you haven't played Elden Ring, you'll have to judge for yourself if you want to continue. For me personally, I generally don't find that learning more about a game decreases my likelihood of playing it or my enjoyment. In fact, often, so-called spoilers increase my enjoyment of a game and get me into it even more. Though maybe that's the topic for a future video. So if you want to see that, number 1, let me know down below if spoilers make a game more or less enjoyable for you, and number 2, if you want to see a full video on the topic. Also then get subscribed, that way you won't miss it when it comes out. Maybe leave a like while you're down there. And for now, let's get back to that journey. Because Elden Ring was a very long game. And for me, there's 2 types of long games. The first drags on me, as I feel like there's too much content, and I'm just checking things off of a list. There's no sense of emotional attachment. Oh look, another point on a map. Oh, side quest. Is this the last one I did? Who are you again? I don't care. Just give me the loot and let me move on. Then there's the second type, that gives me a massive wide open world, a place to explore, and somehow I'm right at the end before I even expected it. Well, I can confidently say that Elden Ring fits into that second category. And rarer still, after spending nearly 200 hours to reach the end of the game, I'm thinking of setting aside more time to play through again on New Game Plus, try different builds, and experience different endings. First and foremost, I think the reason that Elden Ring feels so unique from start to finish is not only the visual diversity of each zone, but the fact that each place functions a little bit differently because it's a reflection of the demigod that resides there. Caelid is war-torn and full of warring factions as a result. Very much a reflection of its master, Starscourge Radahn. Whereas Liurnia is serene, beautiful, and imperious, under the harsh moonlight of the Carian dynasty. Something else that helped to keep the world engaging is, no matter which direction you walked in, there was something to find. A new merchant, a dangerous enemy, a mini-dungeon, or maybe even a full boss. As a result, I didn't feel like I was wasting my time. Even when I was getting lost and finding something cool along the way. Be it an item, a character, a new side quest to do, or more likely a new side quest to start and forget I have an absolutely horrible completion rate for my first playthrough. Or maybe just a really nice view. There were definitely several of those. The one exception to this, where the world design fell a little bit flat for me, was during Shadow of the Erdtree. When I was exploring the major areas and fighting all of the new bosses, everything worked. But then, when I went back to re-explore old zones, and collect Shadow Tree fragments, before defeating, of course, the final boss, I felt like I spent a couple hours wandering aimlessly, getting lost in massive areas that felt hauntingly empty because I had already explored them. I'd cleared them out, but somehow there was a fragment here and a fragment there, but never quite where I expected it to be. And ultimately, that did take away a little bit from my DLC experience. So maybe I'm not going to give it the title of Best DLC Ever, and go with my old favorite of The Witcher 3: Blood and Wine. Then there's the difficulty and the combat. Now, I enjoy Souls games, Souls-likes, and difficult games in general. But I always enjoy them to a point. When I feel like I'm fighting the camera angles or running up against limitations of a game's control scheme or layout, that's when I start to dislike these sort of games. So, in Dark Souls 3, overall, I had a really good time. In playing Lies of P, which I didn't beat, I also had a really good time. But in Erdtree of the Last Song, I didn't really enjoy the demo, mostly because while the gameplay worked well overall, it felt like there was a weird input delay that I struggled to manage, like I was fighting that input delay more than the enemies on my screen, something that I very much hope they resolve for the release version of the title. And putting dragons aside, I rarely ran into these issues in Elden Ring. In fact, quite the opposite. I felt like I had the most freedom to control the difficulty of the encounters. If I felt like a fight was too easy, well, I could make it harder for myself. Or if I felt like a fight was too hard and I needed a little breathing room, I could always bring in a spirit summon, get a little bit of help on the fight, and get through it just barely. Because as it turns out, even though I do enjoy these games, I'm not actually that good at them. Trust me when I say there was a lot of dying, several hours worth on many of the major bosses. Now this is the section where there are some spoilers ahead, so feel free to skip past if you don't want to know boss details. The first thing that I found fell a bit flat were big bosses. Think dragons and hippos, and ultimately, one of the worst offenders was the Elden Beast. Radagon of the Golden Order was an awesome fight, both from a thematic experience watching Marika's body transform into Radagon before your very eyes, and then defeating the essence of the Golden Order. 2, just the mechanics of a fight. He's clearly telegraphed. You can dodge things. I'm not very good at it, but it's definitely doable. And you know what? After a few tries, I felt myself getting better and better, each attempt more successful, and I finally took him down, which was an awesome feeling. And then there is the Elden Beast, which to me felt very phoned in, because it's a giant enemy in a big open room that does nothing but run away and fire ranged attacks at you. In essence, it's everything I dislike about large enemies where the camera really just needs to zoom out by like double, and putting them in large rooms where, yes, luckily now, I fought it at a time where you could use torrent, that helped a lot. But even so, I didn't feel like I was fighting the Elden Beast, I felt like I was fighting the Elden Beast's room. But the Radagon fight was more than awesome enough to prevent the Elden Beast from souring the experience. Now, the other boss that I struggled with, maybe even felt was a little bullshit at times, was Radahn, Consort of Miquella. Not only does he chain attacks together, one after another, but there's just way too much light, which made it very hard to see the attacks and dodge them. Since I couldn't reliably dodge, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to block the world and not worry about any of my problems. But since I was complaining a little bit about bosses that I disliked, I think it's only fair to talk about my favorite boss, both from a combat perspective and also from a lore perspective. Combat-wise, it's Margit the Fell Omen. He's the first difficult fight that I encountered, and after beating him, took a good few hours of attempts, but it felt incredible. Not only that, but it was so cool to then go all the way through the game to reach Leyendell and fight Morgott the Omen King, Margit's true form. It was at once both a victory lap, reinforcing my mastery of the original mechanics, but it was also a recontextualization of those mechanics that put me against a much harder version and dared me to triumph yet again. But then if we're going purely off of cutscenes, it has to be Malekith the Black Blade. If only for his transition/introduction cutscene. And also for the fact that starting at half health, he was still the hardest boss that I fought in the base game outside of Millennia Blade of Miquella.
Oh, death. Become my blade once more.
And that ends the spoiler section. So now back to the rest of my thoughts in the video. And so now I stand before you, as both a frail tarnished and an Elden Lord, as someone who's now completed my journey and is poised to start yet another. As much as I'm tempted to immediately play through Elden Ring again, and this time spend a little bit more time doing side quests, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to, because I also feel like I need a little bit of a break. Regardless, though, I greatly enjoyed the experience, and I wonder, as I play more titles, will these memories remain golden, or, like with so many other games, are they slowly destined to tarnish? And so that's my thoughts on Elden Ring and Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, the only game I played in June of 2024. If you've also been playing through the game, or maybe playing through the game for a second time, then do let me know some of your thoughts down below. On the other hand, if you want to take a look at some of the other games that I've played recently, maybe in a month that I played a few more games, then check out the best games that I played in May and the best games that I played in April. Those will be up in the card and down below. But that's all for me today. So thank you very much to everyone who watched to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed following along with my Elden Ring journey, especially if you caught some of the earlier videos. And also a big thanks to my patrons and channel members who make stuff like this possible. If you want to see more stuff like this, where I play one game for an entire month and wrap up my thoughts at the end, well, number one, I don't think there's going to be too many of those, because there aren't that many games with a month's worth of content. On the other hand, Baldur's Gate 3 and Witcher 3 exist, and both are easily 1 to 200 plus hour titles. And so, link to support is down below. And for now, I need to go figure out if I'm playing through Elden Ring again, or starting something new. But hey, maybe come back next month to see what I ended up deciding.